You know, people who feed on absurdity must have rolled about on the ground laughing hysterically at the prospect of a loose political cannon shooting off allegations in all directions through October 2012 with no particular target in mind. It was Diwali time for sure, and the rockets were going straight to heaven. The real political question is this: were these farcical, incoherent ravings, or was it another historical inflection point? I'd say I'd a pinch a bit of both. Incoherent ravings because the central conceit of the Vadragate story flies in the face of our whole cultural construct. In India, the son-in-law tail generally wags daddy dog. You can never be damned for what your son-in-law does. Conversely, it could also be an inflection point because whether it's politics in India or mafia gang wars in New York City, civilians are never fair game for hitmen. If you're not in the family business and stay away out of politicking or racketeering or whatever it is that the family does, the competition doesn't make collateral damage out of you. Not anymore. But that apart, when dust settles into dust, as inevitably dust must return to dust, the fruitiest piece would undoubtedly be the clear acknowledgement that real estate is the biggest generator of political funding in the banana republic of the mango people. So the political implication of Vadragate is not that someone's son-in-law got bad mouth, but it focuses attention on the real issue. And that could herald change. Subversion of the legal process. Subversion is not how I would put it. I think we need to look at it historically and holistically. Historically, since the dawn of agriculture, till the substantial advancement of the industrial age, land revenue has been the chief financier of the political classes, no exceptions. India today remains substantially an agrarian society. And just because the government doesn't collect taxes or doesn't tax agriculture, it doesn't mean that agriculture is not still the biggest generator of political funding in India. It's just that it goes straight into the parallel economy and there's no interface with the tax department. Now, how we achieved this feat? This particular grease ball so far, on which our political classes recline in genteel, generally ill-gotten luxury, as follows. First, within a decade of independence, we went about enacting limits to the amount of land that a man could own because naturally we wanted everyone to be a landowner in this emerging socialist paradise. So most land ceding laws limit ownership to about 30-40 standard acres, give or take. Now there is no corresponding minimum that a small family is allowed to hold. Many owned very little to begin with. In the 50 years since, as families expanded, subdivided, re-subdivided, every small plot of land today may be owned by 20-30 people, cousins. What is the upshot of this? We have kept toiling masses on the land, slaving away, using primitive methods because they haven't the education to understand new methods or the money to fund the tools necessary to use the new methods. Second, India went about creating laws telling farmers what they may do on their own land. Rural land was to remain rural and it could only be used for what the government called agricultural purpose. Now this was a matter of national importance because we were a poor people who needed every inch of land to grow all the food we could to feed our starving millions. So commercial activities that generate a profit or materially expanded the economy or uplifted marginal farmers out of poverty were manifestly not agricultural purposes. What is the upshot of this? Farmers are engaged in a vicious cycle of low productivity and unyielding, self-perpetuating subsistence living. Land yields are low because land holdings are small, but land holdings can't be increased because it would decrease land yields. Bullshit. Third, if you wanted land to set up an industry, you went to your license, quota, permit, BIBAP and begged them to acquire land for you. To do this, the government used a draconian British era land acquisition law, which has done more to spread, by the way, the joys of poverty and disease than almost any other law in India. Now, if you aren't already bored out of your mind listening to me about land acquisition in India, I can refer you to my website, which pretty much has the whole list of YouTube videos and the articles on it. I'm not going there again. But what is the upshot of this? The government alone acquired land for private people, and it didn't do it for nothing. If you wanted a piece of land, you lobbied the government, and when you had lobbied enough, the land ended up in your hands. The compensation didn't necessarily end up in the hand of the peasants, but I'm not going there again. As we now learn, there are always limits to the amount of misery and violence you can inflict on the powerless without facing an unmanageable backlash. Control of something like a quarter of India is in the hands of Naxals. And so what remains, part of it is in the hands of people like Didi, whose diabolical diatribes are mainly concerned with trying to return lands to landless and powerless people. Why? Ask yourself this. How will you privately buy a small plot of land from each of the 28 cousins who hate each other and don't speak to each other? You don't even speak any language that they speak. How do you get them to act in concert? You need influence, right? Local influence. In the village, the man who has that influence is also the sarpanch. He's also the man who can consolidate votes. He's also the man every politician and his uncle thrice removed is chasing. And you want to deal with him. You have an existing relationship with him. Why should he help you? He needs to be influenced. Who's going to do that? There's a web of relationships out there. And nothing can be done unless you have a huge amount of local political influence. Now, where do you get this leverage? When is this leverage at its greatest? When there's no land acquisition law to help you, no? Because if there's no land acquisition law to help you, you have to go to that guy. And who controls that guy? The guy who's making the laws of land acquisition. This brings us directly to the last and fourth leg of our greaseball sofa. Since all you can do with agricultural land is engage in agricultural purposes, only agriculturists are ready to buy agricultural land, and most haven't the money to do so. And those who do have the money to do so have no intention of tailgating, aromatically flatulating buffaloes, surf riding behind them, ploughing land. This is why agricultural land costs nothing in India, and urban land costs the moon and then a little more. So if you want to buy land to set up an industry, the law requires you to take permission to change the use of the land. If you get this permission, your land worth 100 rupees will overnight becomes worth a few crores at the stroke of a pen. Now the guy who is holding that pen knows this. Why should this guy sign this piece of paper and make you rich overnight? So who's going to get the land converted for you? And how are you going to compensate him for it? You must take in your construction company. But he's not putting money into your construction company and buy shares. So you'll have to give him a loan to buy those shares. Then maybe you'll buy back those shares in a few years at a marked up price. Or you could give him a property, sell it to him cheap, maybe buy it back at 20 times the value in 2 years. Or maybe give him a loan, reverse the transaction in a few years to buy that property. It's just a matter of creating structures. Everybody knows what's going on and how it's done. So, real estate businesses are awash with this kind of stuff. When people talk about real estate company shares being hammered because of corporate governance issues, I mean, I'm speechless. I mean, real estate and corporate governance, whoa. So should you be surprised if you hear that 15% of all Gurgaon is owned by one family? A political family, a dynasty? That another 20% is owned by other political facilitators, service providers? I mean, over the years as a lawyer, I myself steered several real estate transactions in which there's always this extremely quiet 20%, 15% shareholder. He has nothing to say. He doesn't hire a lawyer. He doesn't seem represented. And he doesn't need to insert clauses in his contract because he doesn't think he needs a contract to wring a neck if he needs to or shoot somebody dead. So let me conclude. When people talk about the print media's conspiracy of silence thus far about what's been going on since 1947, I shrug my shoulders and say, so? This is the way it's always been. What's new? What's the problem? You buy land in Kochi because you are amidst a clutch of politically connected people who control the decision to build a bunch of bridges from here to there. And you decide which way the road is going to get aligned. So you buy the land in various names and you make sure the road is aligned along those parcels of land. Then you get approvals to convert that agricultural land which you bought for a song into shopping malls and multiplexes and residential colonies and heaven knows what else besides. And then you sell it and you make a fortune. Abracadabra, money for nothing. That's how it goes. That's the way it's always been. Why are seizures about it now? So as I sit here pondering this bullshit quotient of Vadra Gate, it comes down to the flowing waters of the Ganga and the man who has the power to wash his hands in it and doesn't. Because everybody who could wash his hands in it did. And everybody who didn't wish he knew how to. This is a central truth about real estate in India. Bad-mouthing somebody because you don't like his mother-in-law or his foster father-in-law doesn't change anything. Deregulating changes everything. But that isn't even on the political agenda. Because if you have any political ambition now, one day, you're going to need that same technology to fund your political ambition. Now, unless you find an alternative election mechanism that works, you're going to need this scam and you're not going to want to change it.